what needs to be done to enhance education in the province?
K to 12. K to 12, first of all, I think we have a real problem with class size and composition. I think when I talk to teachers, it's more with composition than class size. We've got 12,000 classrooms that are outside the current class size and composition limits. And that comes down to an issue of funding. So that's the first set of things. We've got to improve the system on class size and composition and ensure that supports for special needs students are there in the system. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is we've got to protect rural schools. I did a lot of work, in saving 3 schools in my community, Carleton, Bruce, and Collingwood schools. And in that process, we did a review of all the schools, the 190 schools that have been closed, I think 120 of them under Christy Clark as Minister of Education. And what that showed is that the way the Liberals have changed the funding formula makes it virtually impossible to run a school under 90 people. And this is critical for communities, right? Because, in fact, if you're trying to attract people to your community, if you're in a rural community, and you don't have a good public school in that community, or if you have an elementary school where people have to bus long distances to go to school, that's a real blow, not just to the education of the community, but to the economic heart of the community. I think you've got to involve teachers in the process, treat teachers with respect. I'm in favor of getting rid of those provisions of Bill 33 that stop teachers from negotiating class size and composition. The reality is that when we negotiated those questions with teachers, we had better record in terms of class size and composition than we do now. And so those issues should be on the table. We should be negotiating more than salary and benefits with teachers, that like everyone else, they should be able to negotiate conditions of work. And finally, I think we've got to get away from the debate around the foundation skills assessment, that we have to move to a system of sampling, which will do all we need to do to judge what's happening in the school system. We have to provide other assessment models for schools because parents want to know how their school is doing and what's going on, but those have to be connected with real resources. I mean, the foundation skills assessment process doesn't do anything to promote public education. I mean, it's a fundraising tool for the Fraser Institute, yeah, but it doesn't do anything to promote public education. And I think if you're going to have a testing model or an assessment model, you should be looking to use that model to improve public schools that perhaps don't have as many resources. And so those are some of the things I'd like to see.
You've talked about rolling back the Campbell corporate tax cuts.
Yes.
He has also introduced huge personal income tax cuts.
Yes.
Some commentators, like Neil Brooks at the Osgoode Hall tax specialist, suggests that maybe we need a new tax bracket at a higher level, let's say $500,000 or something like that. Robert Reich, U.S. economic commentator, has suggested the same things. I'm wondering, if you were to be premier, would you consider introducing surtax on high-income individuals?
It's something to look at. Barack Obama, when he ran for president, set the level of $250,000. The truth of it is, in BC, when you're assessing tax policy, that isn't going to get you a huge amount of revenue. I mean, that's part of the issue there, is that, in fact, a very high threshold for a surtax wouldn't bring you very much revenue.
Or even the highest marginal tax rate, which right now is 14.7%, provincially on top of the 29% federally, kicks in at $128,000 income in British Columbia.
That's right.
Should it be higher?
Well, so those are the issues, right, on that. But what we've seen on the personal tax side is a shift in the way we're collecting taxation from progressive income tax collection taxation on
medical service premiums.
So 50% increase in 2002, 18% the last 3 years, and those happened on the same day. And I was asked by someone at the meeting we met with the Business Council last week. They said, "Well, how can you win on a proposal of raising taxes?" Right? Well, on January 1st this year, the BC Liberals raised taxes. They raised MSP premiums and long-term care fees, and they used that money essentially to subsidize corporate taxes.
Would you cut medical service premiums and cut long-term care fees and increase income taxes?
I've already proposed that we reinstate corporate tax levels at the 2008 levels, and that we roll back the long-term care fee increase. I'm going to look at some of these other questions as well. We haven't stopped talking about those issues. But I think that those tax changes, the ones linked to the carbon tax, and another one, which is the corporation capital tax cut for the banks. This was a tax that had been in place from under the NDP Barrett, under social credit, under the NDP Harcourt Clark, and then under the Campbell Liberals till 2008. It was 2007. It was a $100 million tax. It ensures that banks paid a minimum tax in BC. Since they announced the tax cut, the employment in the banking sector has gone down in BC and up in Ontario. So they gave them a $100 million tax cut, and the result of that was a net drop in employment, even though the finance minister of the day and the Canadian Bankers Association said the reverse would happen. I think banks do very well in BC. They should pay a minimum share as well. So that's another tax cut, recent one, where we'd like to go back to 2008 levels. In that case, linking that to a policy to improve access to post-secondary education. I think that's a good investment for the province to ensure that student grants get restored to at least 2008 levels. I'm going to have more to say on that soon. And that we eliminate interest rates on student loans so that students aren't buried.
Eliminate interest rates?
You bet. It's already very hard to get access to those loans already. So we want to increase access so that students can get ahead. They have a very difficult time getting the loans. The standards will stay high, but that we should shift. We should use the money from rescinding the tax cut to banks and use it to support students' access to education. I think those ideas, particularly the students who get student loans, tend to be lower income students. This is in the nature of things. And so this will, I think, improve access for some people to post-secondary education and ensure after they're done that they're not facing the kind of crushing debt levels we see. $27,000, average student has a $27,000 debt in BC after they finish their education. Often these days, it's much more difficult to get work at that point. And so they're starting way behind. Probably the best time for them to pay for that is when they're earning a higher salary later as a result of their education.